Hey, what's going on, world? What's up, Facebook? Man, I am tired. What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another Friday experience. Um, Let me do my preliminary stuff, like light my incense. And let me share on Facebook. Now's a good time for you guys to share too. That we about to get started. What's going on, world? You can share that we about to get started, and you can let me know where you're watching from, because that would definitely be dope. Glad to know where my peoples are watching from. How y'all doing? Hey, what's going on, Tanya? What's up, Sheila? Man, another long week. Oh, hey, babe. Man, oh man, my tablet acting up. I'm actually very excited about today's experience. Pizza Man's here. Just then you know. Why not? It doesn't matter. We eating pizza tonight, y'all. Hey. But also that you can, prepare. Let me share. Oh, what's going on, Lynn? Oh yeah, I was about to say, aren't you with them? What's up, Kyle? How you living? How y'all doing? All right, so today, hold on, y'all know I can't multitask, right?
Nope. Your pastor cannot multitask.
I cannot multitask at all.
Not humanly possible.
I cannot multitask at all. All right, guys, so today we are going to talk about the ministry of time. Oh, my incense. I forgot to blow it out, so it's like a fourth burnt too quickly. Anyway, we about to talk about the ministry of time today. The ministry of time. So, before we get into that, I want y'all to kind of let me know what comes to mind when you think of time. Like, what are some of the ideas or words or concept that comes to mind when you hear the word time? And I'm gonna give y'all some time to answer that question.
No pun intended.
Right, no pun intended. No pun intended. But I want to give you guys some time to answer that question. Cause I want to hear time management. Okay, very good. Time management. What else comes to mind? When you say time management, what does it mean to manage time? Break that down a little bit, Tanya. Y'all know me. I always want y'all to break stuff down, right? But break that down. What does it mean to manage time? What is time management?
What's your first question?
What comes to mind when you hear the word time?
I guess for me on the onset, a space.
A space, okay.
A space allotted to complete something.
A space allotted to complete something.
Yes.
That is a very good definition. It's definitely in line with what we're about to talk about tonight.
And we didn't treat that kind of.
Yeah, we did, but not exactly. Yeah.
And that includes doing nothing.
That includes doing nothing.
Yeah.
A space allotted to complete something, which includes nothing.
Yes, because nothing is something.
Right. This is true. Nothing is something.
Yeah.
Yeah, this might come off a little philosophical in the beginning, but I promise you we're going to get into some other biblical principles of the subject matter. Stops for no one. All you are is a dash between two dates. So that's D. Hey, sis, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We asking the question. We're talking about the ministry of time today.
Right.
So the question that I asked is, what comes to mind when you hear the word time? All right, stops for no one. So it's funny, when you say it stops for no one, that means that time is something that moves. It keeps going. It's a moving thing. What comes to mind when you hear the word time? Past, present, future. The lessons that were taught, the things we are going through now, and what we will pass on to the next. That's very detailed there, Lynn. That was coming from Lynn. What kind of things come to mind when you hear the word time. Because time has a ministry. Time is, well, we're going to define time in a little bit. I still want to see what you guys say. The process of planning and exercising conscious control of time spent on specific activities, especially to increase effectiveness. Tanya, if I didn't know you, I would have thought you looked that up. That sounded like a dictionary definition. That was a good definition. That was a really good definition. That was very, very, it was articulated very, very well. How there is a time and a place for everything. Very good. I don't have enough of it. I feel you. Yeah, go ahead, babe.
Something that has no, something that's just limitless and has no boundaries.
Something that is limitless and has no boundaries. That's interesting, babe. That's very, very interesting. Something that's limited and have no boundaries. I'm with Michelle, right? Don't have enough of it. We definitely going to talk about that.
Never enough.
There's never enough time, right? At least that's how we feel, right?
Yes.
No, that's what it is. They don't know what we feel. That's what it is.
That's what it is. It's not enough time. I mean, well, it really, when we use this word enough, we would have to break down this word enough. And we're going to talk, we have to deal with it when talking about it. You said what?
I said, nah, there's plenty of time.
Yeah, I think Tanya hit on it when she said about increasing effectiveness. I think that's when I most am conscious of feeling like there's enough time, I haven't utilized it properly.
Right. That's most of us really do feel like we waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's a normal feeling to feel like we've wasted a lot of time. So what is time? Let's start there. What is time? And I could give a definition, but I kind of want to see how people would, like, what is it? Is time, like, what is it a thing? What would you call time? And there is a definition for time that's, I guess, scientific. Or not definition, but time is something in the scientific realm. But I'm just curious to see what we think it is when we just hear it. Or maybe we never thought about it. Like, what is time?
I've never processed that.
Yeah, never even.
Time.
Yeah.
Thought about it.
Because there's a lot that would have to be broken down. So let me kind of move this along for the sake of time, no pun intended, and conversation. But, and then we're going to go to the scriptures, right? And this might even be a series because of the depth of it, but I want to keep it practical. I'll go as far as I believe the Spirit will lead me, and then we'll see what happens at the end of it all. But time is what you call a dimension.
Or a seasoning.
Time, you said a seasoning? What do you mean by a seasoning?
Time.
Oh, you're a mess.
Time is a seasoning.
Time is a seasoning. She's right.
Depending on which country you come from, that's what you said.
Right, you're right. But I'm not talking about that time. Not that time. No, so time is a dimension. A dimension is a plane in which you experience reality. That is what a dimension is. So we say we live in a 3-dimensional world, but that's really not accurate. We live in at least a 4-dimensional world. Some would say 5. Because if you think about height, width, length, and then we have time. And then some people would argue space being something separate from height, width, and length, but we're not going to go into all of the nuances of that because that gets very, very complicated. And it can also get very, very boring if you're not one to think on that level. But time is a dimension in which reality exists or reality is experienced, rather. So when we're dealing with time is a necessary component for finite beings to exist. And I think that's very important. So when we're dealing with God, what we're dealing with is a being, and I believe God is a being. I know there's a lot of, God being a consciousness, God being an energy, and we can go into all that. I believe God is a being because I believe in a personal God, meaning that God is not just some force that is arbitrary and has no will and have no purpose and has no love, etc., etc. I believe God loves us and that God is, in fact, a being that we can have a relationship with, which is very different from just God being abstract, right? So with that being said, but, you don't got to believe that. You believe what you want, but it's still understood that God is a being. I use the word being that exists outside of time. God is not limited or bound by time. Time is not a necessary factor for God to exist, but we're not the same. We are, what's going on, bro? We need time in order to exist. If there was no time, there can be no us. And the reason why this is a fact, an undisputable fact, is because everything that is physical requires time, because everything that is physical has a beginning. And the word beginning, which you're going to go into Genesis, the word beginning is a time word. When you say beginning, you are dealing with time. You cannot have a beginning or an end without there being time. So the fact that you have to start at some point means time is necessary for you to even start. If there was no time, there could be no us. So God exists even before there was a beginning, which is why he was there at the beginning. If he was bound by time, or if he was limited by time, then we would have a conundrum, because there would have to be something to get things started. And whatever that something is or was, that would be the God. That would be ultimately the ultimate creator. Because the first thing, and when I use the word create, well, let's go into the text first, and then we will, and we're going to go to familiar text. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 1. We're going to read verse 1. We're not going to, but I'm going to stop before we get into it all, because I want us to kind of, I want to break this down. I want to teach a little bit before we can apply it, right? Because it says in the beginning. So this is a point of time. Like, it's right there. This is a point in time. And then it says God created. So right there we recognize that time is necessary for creation. If there's no time, there's no creation. Why? Because the things that are created are, at the very most, an extension of God, but in and of themselves not God, because they have a beginning point. Right? So God was there in the beginning to and used the beginning. Rather, God created the beginning. God created time in order to now have the space to create. And I don't want to go past that, because I think some of us, we don't fully understand that a ministry of time. That time was created so that there can be creation. Wow. So when we can understand that is the purpose of time, we won't spend a lot of time rushing through it, because we would realize that every bit of time that we have is an opportunity to create something. So, I mean, you guys are free to add and to ask questions. So God created time so that things or material stuff can be created. There is nothing that is physical or material that exists had there not been the time for it to manifest. Does that make sense? So when we're dealing with eternity, or when we're dealing with God-like things, you don't need time for that to manifest. When you're dealing with physical or natural things, you need time for it to manifest. So what God does is that, if we go, I'll finish verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So there was a point in time where the heavens and the earth was created. There was a point in time where earth and heaven was created. But if you read verse 2, the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of the Lord was moving over the surface of the water. So in other words, the earth had no real shape. It wasn't yet in its completed form. It existed, but it wasn't in its completed form. So what God does is he uses time to complete the earth. Let there be light, and it was the first day. Now you have to understand, we're dealing with a God who can literally do anything and everything. And I don't want to move too fast, because I don't want anything to go over anybody's head. But the reason why the scriptures tell us that God did things each day, certain things done on a certain day, is to teach us how we are to utilize time. Because the problem that we have, okay, first let me move all the way back. When God started creating, he simultaneously was teaching the order of creation. In other words, the way that creation works is that there is time, there is space, and then there is manifestation. There is time, there is space, and then there is manifestation. That is the order of creation. So the issue that we're having in today's society, from my prophetic eyes that I see, is people want to bypass the time and the space and move straight to the manifestation. And they don't use the time God has given to actually create the things that we desire. And part of the reason is because nobody taught us that time is a ministry for creation. The only reason why God gives us time is so that we can build things with it. So if we want things to happen in an instant, we want things to happen in a moment, we want things to happen in a twinkling of an eye and immediately. And I'm not saying these things cannot happen immediately, because like Tanya said, God can control time. Because God is outside of time, he can manipulate time. But the reality is, when he manipulates time, it is always for a greater purpose. At the end of the day, we have to use time the way that God designed time to be used. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's jump down a little bit in this creation story. And you guys, this is a discussion. Feel free to speak. When I get to a certain part and they get real quiet off Facebook, you just tell that they just listening. I be wanting them to get involved. I want to jump down real quick to verse 14. If someone can read verses 14 through 19, just for the sake of context.
Genesis?
Yeah, Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 19.
And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night.
Mm-hmm.
And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years.
Yes.
And let them be for the lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so.
Right.
And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
Okay, very good. So those of you who've been church, this is, children's story. You know what I mean? This is children's story.
Right.
But the depth in it.
Yeah.
The depth. You want to share anything, Ian? I'm doing a lot of talking.
So what stood out to me was verse 15. There will be lights in the expanse of the sky to provide lights, or light on the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light having dominion over the day, and the lesser light having dominion over the night. If you look throughout history, mankind has used stars, the sun, and the moon to be able to tell the seasons or something what's going to happen. And a lot of church folk want to condemn all those type of practices, but God made those things not for just that specific reason, but for everything else. Like, yes, the plants need the sunlight, yes, but the waters need the moonlight to rise, so that the tide can rise, it can lower, so that certain things can happen. There's a multi-purpose for those things.
Absolutely.
Best believe stars aren't just there to look pretty.
That's right.
Stars are there for a reason.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great observation and great point. When we're reading here, when we talk about day and night, what are we talking about?
Light.
Huh?
The presence of light.
We are talking about the presence of light, but what is the day and what is the night? We're dealing with time. We don't even realize, but we're dealing with time. We say daytime and nighttime, but we don't say it anymore. We just say day and night. But we're dealing with time. The sun is up during the day. That is a period of time that is called day. And then there's a period of time that is called night. We're dealing here with time. And what God did was he created things to help us keep track of said time. Right? So time was something that God, not only was that something that God created for us to create, but he ensured that we would know how to keep track of it. Because the way God set this time thing up, how you doing? What's up? The way he set this time thing up is that we would recognize that there'll be certain times for certain things, which is all a season really is. A season is a moment of time for a certain thing. No, go ahead. You can
Listen, because I was in the car like. So, okay. So when you said that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So remember when one, because I'm not, listen, I got to get more in my word, but
Right.
when one of the prophets asked, he's like, can you just turn back the hands of time? And you were saying time is set for a certain purpose.
Yes.
So if it's set for a certain purpose
Yes.
and it's been created,
Yes.
the creator of
Yeah.
anything can revamp the creation
Absolutely.
to serve the proper purpose.
Absolutely.
So it's like, oh.
Absolutely.
Because I was thinking, well, I never looked at it like, I felt like once it started, it can't be manipulated. Do you see
Right.
what I'm
I do
saying?
see what you're saying.
And even
Yeah.
though you don't connect God created time.
Right.
Because in my mind, it was always a concept of time was always a thing.
Right.
It is just that we are the only ones affected by it.
Right.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when people would come and be like, oh, so when was God? I don't got the answer to
Right.
when he was created or if he was.
Yeah, but that's a
or if
never
he
ending
never was.
question. So
But
it's-
if it's this, then outside of that is something outside of the box.
Exactly.
So this is a creation. This is a thing that is created.
Right.
For a need.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
No, right.
It's created for a need.
Right.
So it's just like people operated without cell phones for centuries.
For centuries.
You know?
For
it's
millenniums.
do you know what I'm saying?
For
Before there was even
eons.
a telephone itself.
Yeah.
So it's not that the thing didn't need to be
Right.
created. Do you see what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
It's just simply there was existence before it. That's what
That's
I'm trying
the
to
point.
get to the
Right.
point.
And that's why when people ask when was God created, they've already messed up who God is. There cannot be a when without time.
Right.
You can't say when was God created, because then you've already put him in time.
Yes.
Right.
See what I mean? God was always there. And it's hard for us to understand because we weren't always here. And whether we believe it or not, when we're born, most of us don't have a consciousness of when we were born, right? But as we explore the earth, we run into things that was there before us.
Right.
So by default, that's proof that we started at some point,
Right.
that we had a beginning.
Yes.
So the idea that there is a force or a being that has always been without there being time is very difficult for us to comprehend.
It's just like it's difficult for the children nowadays. They're like, so there was like a time with no cell phones.
Right.
Like,
And no internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh my
They
God,
can't.
so what did you do?
You must have been bored.
No, I had a real good time.
we went outside and played, read books.
Good time, man.
Right. There was actually physical interaction with other human beings.
Absolutely.
Like even when people are socializing now, nobody's really engaging with each other because everybody's utilizing their technology.
Right. Which is fine, which is a good thing. But then it's also a limiting thing.
Well, we created those because while we had time,
We
we
did.
created those.
Right,
That's what we
exactly.
did
Yeah,
with the
that's what we
time.
did. That's what we did with the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now things are the thing about time, and I kind of want to put this in our mind, if I can, a little bit, because Lynn talked about past, present, future. And I didn't want to go there, but we'll go there because it was mentioned. I think it's relevant for what we're dealing with now. So when you're dealing with a season, first, let me deal with this before we deal with past, present, future. When you're dealing with a season, in every season, there is an optimal activity, or there is creation that is optimal for that season.
Right.
Go ahead.
Just like the planting and the growing.
But that's exactly right. That's exactly
The
right.
seasons
Yes.
that you can plant certain crops, right?
Yes. So that's how seasons work. So the issue with man is so fixated in controlling time instead of utilizing time. So what we do now in the Western world, in the so-called developed world, is we have divided seasons to certain dates that we created
But
versus, you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. Versus recognizing that spring may have been 3 months last year, and it could be 5 months this year.
Exactly.
Because God is trying to help us maximize our creation within that springtime.
Right.
You see what I mean? So the issue is that we don't understand how time works. We never take advantage of the ministry of time, and we try to create things outside of the time to create it.
Right.
We think that time is something that was created and was set free versus time constantly being created before us so it can be there when we get there to create the things we're trying to manifest. So it's a living organism. It's a living, I was going to say organism, but it's a living creation where God is constantly creating more and creating more and creating more. It wasn't like, okay, here's time.
And then that's it, yeah.
Because even though we step into eternity, we will always experience eternity within time because we had a beginning. So what God does, he says, I'm going to bring you into where I am, but you will only experience where I am from your perspective of time. Because there's no way for you to experience what life was before this. Because you've existed from this point forward. Does that make sense? So everything plays a part. Go ahead, babe. I don't want you to forget what you're going to say unless you already forgot. I would have asked you when you take a bite, like right at the biting moment.
Oh, talking about is a time or a season for stuff. What you think about, of course, it's near and dear to my heart, having children.
Yes.
And how people try to create create time. So, in the realm of having children, you can choose to have it vaginally or you can have it by cesarean.
Mercy.
A lot of the people in the Western world are creating the time in which they'll have their children, but their children may not be, it's not the season for them to be born per se, but I like the date, or I'm scared of having a regular birth, and so I'll just cut out all that and then, take complete control of that process without letting the natural just exist.
Right.
I mean, there's kids who are born, the rule of thumb, generally speaking, kids are generally born full term between 38, preferably 40 weeks.
Right.
So anywhere in that time frame, your child is good. But there have been numerous children that have been born at 26 weeks, and 27 weeks, and 28.
And they're good
and
still.
it was the time
it
for
was
them
the time. That's
to
right.
be born.
That's
You know
right.
what I'm
That's
saying?
right. That's
so,
right.
That's just my example. That's all.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about seasons, you think about Joseph, right?
Yes.
And so with Joseph, the
Yes.
years of famine
Yes.
and then the years of plenty.
Yes.
So in general, we would think, okay, you plant your crop during this time, and if I just keep doing this at a proper, but it's not controlled by us, no matter what we do. And so he may extend this time, so that you can prepare for that time.
Exactly.
Wow. And it just dawned on me. Why so Solomon said there's a time for everything.
That's why he said
And
that.
it's so much deeper than this. Okay, yeah, this is the time for this. Like, no, God orchestrates a time for certain things to happen.
Yes.
And that's crazy. Like, we just see it so vaguely.
Right.
It's so complex.
And that's what a season is. And that's what time was created for. What I'm trying to help us understand in a deep way is that is why time was created. When you understand that this is why time was created, you won't get so fixed or so caught up on trying to save time. Because time is not something you can put in a box. You can't put it in a bottle. Time is something that has to be utilized on the spot. Like right now. So a lot of people, they're trying to rush as if they can save time. But in trying to rush, all they're doing is mismanaging their time and therefore wasting time in trying to save it.
Yeah, because people tell us once you lose time, you can't get it back.
You can't get it back. That's right.
Man, yeah. So this is, I guess it's a question. Because I remember it. I see it in my daughter. I see it in most of, I think every generation. It never fails. That feeling of wanting to be older.
Yes.
Feeling of,
Yes.
How do you remedy that at that age, at this age, even at this age?
Yeah.
Because I know that sounds crazy because even at this age, I hear women in their early 40s who are like, that's the time. That's the time when I really have it together. And I'm like, come on 40 then. Cause,
right.
this 30 ain't. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
So how do we mentally. Because if it's already starting there,
Right.
how do we put it in or break it down to say, because they be like, stay in a child's place, but how do you say it in a proper way to just really help them understand, like, the time you're in is the best time for you to do what you're doing
right
now.
I think if I was to give a suggestion, because I have kids, so that's a very relevant question even for me, but I think we have to allow them to explore that time. There is a season in which, what we call adolescence, if you will, where you want to be older, but in reality, you're getting older. Like, that's a moment where you realize you're not a child anymore. So this perception of wanting to be older actually fits the stage that they're in. The problem that we have as society is we have put a lock on what's too old for you. Or, you're not ready for this. So a child could be 12, 13, having sexual desires, and they're expressing it. And instead of dealing with it, because the time has come, we will say, you're too young for that. But they're already, how are they too young? It's already happening. So instead of saying, you're too young for that, and saying, wait till you're older, because they can't wait, it's happening right now. So I think the approach is to educate them on how to manage what's actually happening. How to be responsible with that.
How do you manage?
Every child is different. Like if we're watching a movie, like me and Abby, we kiss in front of each other, in front of our kids all the time, right? We kiss in front of them, and they don't flinch. The kissing scene. Now, mind you, when we kiss, they don't flinch. The kissing scene, Naima always says, "Let me close my eyes." Now, I've never taught her that. I've never covered her eyes or nothing. It's something in her that is like protecting her. Like, it's not time for me to erase this. That's just where she is. So I can either say, nah, baby, that's natural, go ahead and watch it. Or I can let her grow and develop how she's growing and developing.
Right.
You see what I mean? There's something in us where we're so protective that we start to stifle the natural growth that God is doing.
Right.
And from someone who grew up in Jersey, in the streets of Jersey, I might add, most of my friends grew up fast.
Yeah.
They had to survive what they were going through.
Yeah, my mom told me, like, when they were growing up, like, young men were driving, like, pickup trucks, not, like, just farm tractors. Like,
Right.
Young man, if you can see over the steering wheel, you are responsible for driving into town.
Yeah.
Picking up groceries.
Yeah.
So, all of that. So, at the time, if you're old enough to do this, then you're responsible for
Right.
this.
Right.
And go ahead.
No, it just kind of dawned on me. Like, an example I think we all can use is trying to build muscle.
Yes.
That takes time. And
Now, why does it take time?
Because throughout our lives, there are certain times when our bodies will be more susceptible to various types of workouts. Like push-ups. At 16, I could do as many push-ups as I wanted, and I still have a hard time putting on muscle. But the older I get, when I'm consistently working out, I'm like, ooh, I feel that strain.
Right.
Like, if I keep doing it now, I'm at that age where my metabolism slowed down, but my muscles are ready to receive all the energy, and so it's just a moment of time.
That's right.
That we can do certain things, and I think that's what my parents failed to teach me in certain aspects. It's like,
failed to teach all of us.
Yeah, like, no, you don't do this because you just don't do it. It's not your time. But it's like, well, I have a question about it. Like, I want to know. If I didn't want to know, then I wouldn't care.
Exactly.
So it's just, I see that as one example to use, just like trying to build one's body.
But let's build on that example. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other aspect of it is you just have to understand that when you're building muscle, the process is you're actually breaking something.
Right.
So if you don't allow that process, if it's not broken and that process is going through that healing so that it can be stretched and whatever it is that it takes for muscles, that's why you're actually hurting the process. Or you're impeding the process. You're hurting your body organism.
Yes.
Because if you're just working on legs every day,
that's
It's
It
a problem.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why you have to rotate. Today's leg day, tomorrow's arm day,
Right,
next
right,
day's
right,
core, whatever,
right,
whatever.
right.
Because you're overextending what it is that
Exactly.
is. You're impeding the process of that
Yes.
healing so that you can go on with that.
And that's a
I love
word
it.
because when I was younger, I would do full body workouts and I would get no results.
That's right.
And I'm like, man, how come I can't bulk up? You know,
Right.
I would eat more. I was eating a lot.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. It took a certain time for me to realize, okay, today will be chest day.
Right.
Tomorrow back, Wednesday legs, all
Yes.
that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it's a process.
It is. And the word process is something that is bound by time. Let me use that same example, and I'm gonna make it simple. To me, it's simple, but I'm gonna make it simple, right? But pull out the depth in it, right?
The church has spoken.
You know,
That was a unanimous.
but when you talk about your muscle,
Yeah.
your muscle is literally a physical thing. It's physical.
Right.
By nature, it needs time.
Right. Right.
By nature, it needs time. You're trying to grow that muscle because it's physical.
Right.
It needs time to grow. So what God does is He gives you the time so that muscle can grow.
Yeah.
So the process that we hate so much is actually the grace of God to manifest the things we're asking for.
Yes.
Because if you want money, you want real physical money, then you need the time to get the money.
Exactly.
So instead of whining about the time God has given you to get it, celebrate the fact that there is time to get it.
You know, that speaks on, oh my gosh, singleness.
Mm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it is.
We hitting everything.
When, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you talk about that thing, when I heard it that first time, like it's really meant for you to utilize. And being a mother,
Yes.
you know, seeing my friends in relationships,
Yes.
being in marriages,
Yes.
you know, who they were before that marriage,
Right.
how involved they were with whatever they were involved with
Right.
before their marriage,
Right.
and who they are as a person now.
Yes.
They are dedicated to that home base.
Right.
And it's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing
That's
wrong with
how,
that.
you know, God intended it to be.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, take this time. This is the best
The best time. Yes.
Because let's think about it. So scientifically, our brain, our frontal lobe doesn't develop until
Till 27, 30. Yeah. Right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry for rushing
You're
past
right.
that, guys. I'm
You're
sorry.
right. Okay.
Yeah. We've had these conversations. So.
Okay, so with all, you know, like all that doesn't happen, and so in this process, in this time, even though they got married young, then it's one of those things in that singleness.
Yes.
You have a time to really get to know
Yes.
you.
Know
because
you.
And
If you take the time to do it. But go ahead.
here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing. There's so
Yeah.
much time spent on you need a man.
Yeah,
You need a wife.
yeah,
You need
yeah.
a mother.
Let me tell
Yeah.
You need to do.
Yeah.
And that is like a curse we are putting
Exactly.
over the earth. I'm not talking about
Exactly.
black people. I
Everybody.
think that is every culture
Yes.
across this globe. Stop putting that
Yes.
on people.
I
That's a
agree.
word.
I agree.
Even in marriages. Oh, isn't it time for y'all to have a kid?
Right,
Says
right.
no.
Says who? No, that's
Maybe
exactly
your
right.
ministry is to do what you're doing with married couples
That's
with
right.
just you.
That's right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Or that time
Absolutely.
to build together.
Absolutely.
Because this needs to be solid.
Exactly.
Before a kid even come, because if a kid comes too early, it might break down what you have right now.
That's right.
Right.
Do you
That's
see
right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
like, why are we always trying to rush a thing when God has already prepared a time
Because,
for
like
that
you
thing?
said, it's a global mindset.
It is. It
Well,
is.
Why?
That we've been indoctrinated that when you're 5 you go to school, and when you graduate
That's
then
right,
you're on
that's
this
right,
level,
that's right.
and then when you
Yes.
hit college then you're on this
That
level.
is a.
But
It's
God-
like an
Western
established
philosophy.
pattern
Yes.
already that
But God
people
can
think
add
globally.
time.
Oh, you're 30 and you're not married? You're
Right.
something wrong with you.
Something-
Right,
What's
right,
the problem?
right, right.
Oh, you've been married for 5 years and don't have kids?
Something
Right.
wrong.
You're out. You're
Right.
off schedule. Like,
Something's
what are
wrong
you
with her
doing
or something
your
wrong
life?
with him. That's
But
how they
there
look
was
at it.
time given to Adam to do developmental things.
Absolutely.
So why is that not the push?
Because
But you
people
see
are
how far away
ignorant.
we are from that, though.
Exactly.
Like that's from the beginning.
That was God's
Yes,
agenda.
that-
Not
I love it.
somebody else's agenda.
I mean, we jumped
Okay,
from
so
Adam
as Christians, we
to
should follow
2018.
that.
You're
Now
right.
we've had many conversations about how Christianity is in the Western world,
compared to
So
Yeah.
you already know, just because people are Christian don't mean they're really Christ-like.
Right.
You know, they're church members. They're not really followers of Christ.
Right.
And we've had that conversation several times.
times.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
But
We had that
I
conversation.
think we had it last week. Wasn't it last week we had that conversation?
Hashtag.
But you had a word though, because growing up, we're taught, okay,
Make sure I hit
well,
the right
like
chord.
for me specifically, if I didn't have a girl, then I'm blowing it. Like, I
Right.
got nothing going on for me. You know?
Right.
So like, I was always like, man, I gotta try to find a girlfriend. Da, da,
Yup.
da, da. Okay, this one don't work. On to the shut up. This one don't work. On to the next. This one work. On to the next one. And I wasn't really paying attention to the things I needed to learn in those relationships. God was still blessing me, even
Right.
though there was a time that I should have took for myself.
Yes.
That I didn't. But
Yes.
now with this relationship, I feel like God slowed me down. Like, listen, I'm about to whoop you,
Yeah.
but you're gonna learn some things.
You're going to learn some
And I
things.
could have learned those things if I was by myself and just worked on myself.
Let me say- okay,
Yes.
and that's the lesson that I'm learning now. Like
Yeah.
the same thing that you're learning. But here's the thing: I'm 30, and this should have been a season for something totally
I see what
different.
you're
Do you
saying.
see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm taking this time
Right.
to be totally honest that mostly should be dedicated to cultivating, raising my children. I should have already been cultivated to cultivate
So
my
what that
children.
tells us, or
No, I'm
for
gonna-
me
I'm
specifically, there was still a consequence for me doing what I was doing and not doing what God was trying to tell me to do.
We sure do.
But God was still gracious. You know,
Oh,
Jesus
yeah, God
is still
is definitely
gracious.
still
You know what I mean?
gracious,
But
yeah.
it's like this should be a time I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's put the down payment on for this house. Let's do this. Let's do that. But I'm learning.
Yeah.
God, you preach the word though. 'Cause
I want to deal with some of the stuff that was said here, and then this next thing I actually might save for next week. So this is turning into a series, low key. But
Save it, Path.
yeah, I'm gonna save it. Sheila, well, let me read the comment before that. Michelle said, "I think the hardest part is accepting that we can't control time; we can only manage it."
You're right.
Now that's facts,
I mean,
right?
You look in like all
That's
these films
facts.
today. Everyone's trying to control time, go back in time. It's
Yeah.
like, that's not how life works.
That's not how it works. And I'll deal with that next. Then the next one,
Okay.
Yendo says God's time is not the same as our time as Christians. Us as Christians, we take time for granted. And I want to challenge just a little bit. It's not that it's not the same time, it's that we perceive and use the time differently. Because really, if we're completely honest, the only time we have is now.
Right.
Everything else is reflection or potential.
Right.
Yep, now
Right.
But the only time we have is now.
Right now.
Right.
And now is God's time.
Right.
But we look at now different than how God looks at now. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It really
You know.
does.
So, and that's why we take the now for granted, because we don't realize right now is different from the later now. Like, we don't recognize that all we have is now, and since we're always in the present, we presently move to a new place and wonder, how did I get here? When did I get here? I didn't think I would be here. But that's because we didn't take the now, we didn't take advantage of the now 5 years ago, or the now 2 years ago. So even after we have this conversation, there's going to be things that we're going to feel the move. God is going to move us and say, you have now to do it. And we're going to look at that thing and we're going to marvel at that thing. Be like, yo, that is so amazing. And we're going to write that thing down, and then we're going to watch TV. And then we're going to go on
That's
social
real.
media.
That's real.
And then we're going to hang out with our whatever.
I'm good.
And then a year, 2 years later, when we don't have the time now because it's a different now, we're going to be like, oh, God, I didn't have enough time.
I'm like, okay, really.
When we didn't recognize the season of the right now. Okay, so here's a question that Sheila asked. She said, with all this being said, can things take too much time to develop? And I do want to answer that question. That's a good question. Then I'm going to read what Lynn said. But I want y'all to, I kind of want everybody's feedback.
Can you say that question again?
With all that being said, because we said a lot, can things take too much time to develop? Now,
I'm sorry, just to say.
when we're dealing...
Say it the third time.
Say it the third time? Okay, third time. With all that being said, can things take too much time to develop? Now here's the issue. Here's the issue. I'm going to say no, but it's with a clause. There's a contingency clause, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say no because the amount of time for something to develop is based on what it is that you're actually building.
It's relative. Yeah, it's very relative.
Sheila hates when I use that word relative, so I didn't say the word. She hates it. Because everything's relative.
Because it's, yeah.
You know? But it's just like how, I'll use this example, then I'll let you speak on it, babe.
Right.
Like, you know how, have you ever cooked something that was in your freezer? Right? You take it out the freezer, you're going to warm it up, right?
Yeah.
Now, I like to eat the frozen beef patties. I like to eat it because, no offense to Huntsville, but I haven't found a good beef patty in Huntsville, for real. No offense.
Or Caribbean.
Yeah, no
Wait a
offense.
minute.
No offense, we're not going to argue, I'm just saying.
Sis.
Right? But the frozen ones I kind of enjoy. So
I don't care.
because I eat it regularly, I will grab it and they'll tell you how much time it is, but I know how much time it is for my oven and my microwave, etc., etc.
Right.
But there'll be times where I will set the time that's normal, but then I will pull it out and it's still cold inside. That's because for whatever reason, this one was different from the other ones. Though all the other ones warmed up at this specific time, this one, for whatever reason, needed more time in the oven.
Was it because of this position?
So it could be a factor. There's so many factors.
Right.
I could complain about it, or I could just give it more time so I can get what I want.
Ooh.
And that's where the perception needs to change, where it's like, because we tend to say, this is taking too long. Well, sometimes it takes that long.
Wow.
Like when you're cooking a Thanksgiving turkey, the turkeys that are done in 2 hours are dry and they're just not that good. The turkeys that take 10 hours, I'm talking that slow, that slow cooking, and the whole time you're smelling it and you're hungry, you say, yo, I want to take it out now, but if you take it out now, it ain't ready. It will not. You rob yourself of the joy.
And sometimes, man, and this goes for so many situations. It may look like it's ready on the outside.
Come on. Oh, yeah.
Honey, on the inside, that thing right there.
It ain't done yet.
It's not even close. It's raw.
Right.
You're right.
And it will make you sick if you consume it.
That's real.
That time.
That's
You know
real.
what I'm saying?
And I ain't got time for that.
Go ahead, babe. What are you going to say? I don't want you to forget it.
Remind me of the question again. I
Her-
wrote down my answer. I just want to make sure I answered correctly.
Her question, and Lynn added a good point when we procrastinate. And I'm going to have to make this a series because we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
With all that being said, can things take too much time to develop?
No, because we add on a sense of urgency.
Right. Right.
And whether it's urgency as it takes too much time, or I'm in a certain position and I need this to move right now, is relative.
Yeah.
It really is relative. It's really relative. I mean, even like, even go back to the example of having children. Quote unquote, there's a time frame where women are to have children, but there have women. You can be as fertile. You can be as fertile as you want to be, up until your 60s and 70s and
That's
whatnot.
true.
And I mean, the Bible speaks of women having babies for eons, and people have lived for hundreds of years and they were still having children. So just because that's just what it perceives to be right now, and I understand there's quote unquote risk factors and things have changed. Yeah, whatever. But we tend to imply a level of urgency, and when we apply the level of urgency, I feel like logic and reason kind of just chips off at the end result.
Right, because it becomes more emotional than anything else.
It becomes more emotional, yeah.
That's a good point.
So basically, it all depends on our patience.
Mm-hmm.
And how long we're willing to wait.
Yes.
Because how long we're willing to wait doesn't mean that's the same amount of time that God has this process going for us.
Right.
So,
because it's like even like people who go to college in their 40s, 50s, 60s, do they feel sometimes some of them feel like they wasted time,
right?
By working or not working, whatever it may be. But it's also maybe the time for you to go because you're at a place where you would have excelled way better now.
Right.
You would have.
Right.
Back then.
I'm so glad you said
And
that.
you still have money that Sally Mae has not been calling you about
Preach.
on reservation and
Preach.
preserved for you
Preach.
in your 40s and 50s
Yep.
that you could have either wasted or may have not been available
Right.
even then.
And I'm
So-
glad you said that because Will and I talk about it. Like, if we couldn't have pulled straight out of high school, it would
Man,
bad.
who you telling?
bad. We would have been bad.
Man, who you
Well,
telling?
sounds like
We would
you
have
telling?
I mean, but I wasn't mentally ready
Exactly.
to do what I'm doing now back
Yeah.
then.
And most people aren't, and that's the issue. That's the issue with taking too much time. I wanna hit Lynn's point of procrastination. When she said something else, everyone's time is different. Those who rushed it aren't even happy majority, and wish they had that time to do it differently. That is so true. Taking time by yourself is like waiting for a fruit to ripen. And we don't understand that process, and we're gonna talk about that. Picking that fruit too soon, you won't get to enjoy it. And that's true.
Yep.
That is so true. I want to talk a little bit about procrastination. Then we gotta pray because my incense done, right? But because when we talk about procrastinating, making it longer for us, it kind of extends our time. The reality is the time for that thing didn't even start until we started. If you look at it like if you're growing a garden, you didn't start your garden when you bought the seeds. You didn't start your garden then. When you plant your seed is when you start the garden. And the issue with procrastination is that you never got started. And it's taking you longer to see fruit. But only, and I mean, I don't want to offend nobody, but I do anyway, right? But only an idiot would expect fruit from a plant that hasn't been planted.
Right.
Like, you are holding the seeds, but you're looking for fruit. That makes no sense.
And you just kind of connected the dots.
And that's what procrastination does. Procrastination is, here are the seeds. And you're like, man, it's taking forever because you're holding the seeds. Because the sad part is, or the devastating part for the procrastinator is holding the seeds doesn't make the time in the ground accelerate. So you still gotta wait for the natural order of things to happen because that's why God created the time. So things can be created. So you're either gonna use your time creating, or you're going to not use your time creating and then be mad at God because nothing was manifest in your life.
Man.
You know how many people are cursing God out right now? And God is like, all the time I've given you, you've thrown it away, but you're mad at me.
Right.
You're saying I didn't provide because you didn't do nothing with the time. Man, I want to go to next week's message right now, but we don't got time.
Or you did something with the time thinking that it was aligned with what I had for you to do. Sometimes we're so focused on our personal agenda, or the way we do it, the way we like it hung up, the way we like it folded, the way we like it clean.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes
spending too much time on the details and
You missed the whole forest.
You missed the whole day. The sun came up and went
Yeah.
down. It's time to go to bed. You got nothing accomplished.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I hope you're happy with the way it looks, the way it, blah, blah, blah.
Hope you like that one window that's spotless,
There you go.
while the rest of the house is still a mess.
Right. Because that's all you have.
right. Yeah. When you said it's like somebody holding the seeds in their hand but expecting the tree to grow, for some reason that kind of brought me to the whole creation versus evolution. Either way, things still take time,
Still
right?
take time, right?
But for something to come from nothing,
Yeah, that makes no
it
sense.
makes no sense. So
That makes no sense.
it's like using that analogy. Say God just planted creation, whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not how it happened.
Right.
It's
right.
like, okay, that's all right. I need time because this thing gotta grow.
Now watch that, but keep going.
So, in that you plant these things and they grow, they still gotta go through a process.
They still gotta go through a
They gotta
process.
be watered.
Yes.
They gotta get light.
Yes.
You know, like they need to suck in CO2 and all that kind
Yes.
of stuff. So like that's how these things grow. It all works together.
It all works
It
together.
all works together. And for people to think that's not how life is, it's like,
It's ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having this conversation. We're gonna reflect a little bit. I don't have no music, but I wanna address something that you said. still using your analogy that God is planning creation, right? That's how it was done, right? He's planning. And he says, I need time. It's not that he needs time. Creation needs time.
Yeah.
And when we can understand that, when we can finally realize it's not me that needs the time. It's what I'm manifesting that needs the time. When, that thing is so powerful. It's so powerful when you realize, man, I don't need the time. What I'm creating needs the time.
That's deep.
So I'm going to invest my time on the thing I'm looking to manifest.
There we go.
Like that is, I praise God for the grace to have the time to give what I'm looking to manifest. I need healing. So my body needs time to rest so that everything going on inside of my body can happen. So instead of being like, oh, I've been sick for a week, hopefully I've used that week to give my body the time it needs. To give my heart the time it needs. To give my mind the time it needs. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why it was there. Because when we talk about, man, my spirit is broken. I need a new spirit. And God says, I'm going to bless you with a new spirit. You're about to receive it. Give yourself the time to manifest it. I'm giving you time and space for the manifestation.
Uh-oh. Here comes science.
That's the ministry of time. And when we can really, and oh man, next week there's another side that we're gonna talk about next week. But I guess we're gonna leave with something. If there's something that I want everybody to think about, I want everybody to kind of close their eyes. What's up?
I thought about something like.
Oh, go ahead.
About healing and time.
Yes.
If you've ever seen something healed, it comes from below.
Yeah.
And the cells come up from below, from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of planting.
Yeah.
And it comes from below and it emerges.
Yeah.
I think we are too fixated on the visual growth
Absolutely.
of time. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
And everything he gives us, every single creation.
Yes.
Children, food, healing.
If it's physical.
Everything.
Yes.
Spirit. Because.
Yeah, it's metaphysical, but yeah, right.
All of it. Inside.
Yeah,
outward,
that's right.
Inside, outward.
Everything.
This is dope.
Everything.
That's what faith is.
That. You said it, man. We're never gonna end. We're never gonna end because you said it, though.
Like I'm about to kiss it.
No, because you said it. Because faith is not believing in what doesn't exist. Faith is believing in what you do not see. It's there. And the time for it to manifest to where you can see it. That's all you need. But if you don't know it's there, then you think nothing is happening and you waste all that time, which in your mind is like, this is taking so long to manifest. No, you haven't planted. If your faith is there, then you'll nurture the thing you're looking to manifest, and in its proper season, it will manifest. You'll see it. That's how everything that's physical works. There is not a physical thing on this earth that did not take time to manifest.
Even the mountains took
Not one. There is not one. That's the thing. There's not one.
Even the oceans took time to fill up.
There's not one thing. If it's a diamond, if it's a grass, if it's a rock, it all needed some time to manifest. And each of them, even when we talk about babies, we're dealing with average time. Meaning our experience has taught us that within this time, usually something starts manifesting.
Right.
But in our life, we're dealing with personal time. And for some of us, it may take shorter or longer, but if you know it's there, or if it's something that you want, even before we get to the faith thing, if it's something that you want, we need to move from that prayer that says, God, I want this, and we're expecting it to come tomorrow. We would hope it will come tomorrow. We praise God if it comes tomorrow. But we ought to ask God for the grace, for the time and the space to manifest my desires. Say, all I need is time and space, and I can have what I want. Because everything physical, that's all it needs. Nothing. You name it. You give it time and space, it'll be there. It will be there. All right, so everybody, I want y'all to close your eyes. I want y'all to close your eyes. I might hear my daughter cry. I don't know what my wife likes to do. Y'all pray for my daughter. Okay, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. All right, everybody close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. And I want to start in the darkness, and I want to move into the light, right? Because that's what God did, right? I want you to really go back and reflect just real quick on all the time that God has given you that you have wasted, in the sense of you did not utilize it the way that you should have utilized it.
Right.
I want you to just reflect real quick, if I can give you an illustration of all the springs that came by, spring seasons that came by, and you planted nothing. All the springs that have went by and nothing was planted. And you go through a winter with nothing, or you go through a summer with nothing, you go through a fall with nothing, you go through a winter with nothing. Spring comes back around and you planted nothing. How many years, how many springs have gone by with nothing planted? I want you to think about that. Now, I want to move from that, and I want you to think about the fact that a season is coming back.
Wow.
And what are you going to do now with this spring that is coming? What are you going to do with the spring that is coming? Because if you stay too long on all the springs that you've lost, you find another 5, 10, 15, 20 years gone by, you still have nothing. But if you recognize, okay, there were seasons where I should have planted and I didn't plant, but I see a season coming where I can plant again. What are you going to do different when that season comes? I'm gonna say this line, then we're gonna pray. A smart man uses this time to maximize the day. A wise man uses this time to maximize the week. A smart man uses this time to maximize the day. A wise man uses this time to maximize the week. Let's pray. Father God in heaven, I'm so grateful that you've given us time. There's so much more that we have to talk about, and I'm so glad you've given us the time to discuss it. And that we don't have to rush. We can take our time because it's the time that you've given us to take. So Lord, help us to get out of this microwave mentality where just as quick as it got hot, it gets cold. Help us to get out of that mentality and help us to really understand the ministry of time so we can utilize time for its purpose and its function. Help us to pay attention to the seasons that come, to utilize all the different signs that you've given us to see the season that we're in, so that we can maximize in that season and create those things necessary for that season. Bless us so that we can return even next week. Lord, throughout this week, even today, help us to see the best way to use the time that we have from this point. Let us not wait another week to learn more about time, but you are indeed our teacher. So give us insight and wisdom now on how we can use our time right now better. Whether it be rest or whether it be waking up, whatever is necessary for each of us, give us that insight, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Man, thank you guys. I know we're going to talk more while we're here. But for those of you, I'm going to put up a link real quick if you want to donate to the ministry. If you are blessed, if you felt like you have been fed. Peniel's tomorrow for those of you who are local and are watching. Very excited about that. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Y'all know what we're talking about next. We're going to talk more about time, ministry of time. There's some things we couldn't get into today. I'm going to save it for next week. There's more to talk about. Those of us that are here, y'all know we're going to chop it up some more. But you guys are officially dismissed. Peace. Oh, I'm so glad you was blessed. Praise God.